So my absolute favorite flower is sacred Datura. It'll also go by the name desert thorn apple, and the scientific name is Datura wrightii. There are other Daturas in the Americas, like Datura stramonium, Jimson weed, but this is the one you're going to find throughout California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona. And if you're familiar with other nightshades like angel's trumpet or night blooming jasmine, you'll have a pretty good idea of what to expect out of this flower. Which means yes, it is dangerous. Like most nightshades, it contains alkaloids. In peppers and tomatoes, these are concentrated in the seeds, and they are how we experience the heat from these fruits. But for a nightshade like sacred Datura or white horse nettle, these tropane alkaloids are extremely dangerous. I don't want to oversell it, like you can touch the leaves and I pluck the flowers, but I also wash my hands if I touch the pollen, the nectar, or the seeds. But I do want to stress that this is absolutely not a medicinal plant. If you decide to look up more about this plant and do some research, you do end up learning more about the tropane alkaloids that are within it, which can lead you to discover that it is a deliriant, which means that on top of the severe pain, fever, and paralysis that you experience if you come in contact with this, you can also experience ultra-vivid hallucinations. These affect the brain the same way the active chemicals in Dramamine and Benadryl do. But again, and I cannot stress this enough, this is not an all-natural herbal alternative to Dramamine and Benadryl. This is a dangerous plant. Do not consume. And the hallucinations are not fun. This is a nightmare generator. I don't like the term, but people will call it a psychosis simulator for a reason. And I don't like that term because this plant does have a lot of cultural history with the indigenous people and ritualistic practice. But when divorced from the ancestral knowledge of how to use it safely, it is not a tool of enlightenment. Don't use indigenous people as an excuse to harm yourself. Now, of course, the most iconic thing about sacred Datura are its large white night blooming flowers. And what's cool is that they'll actually choreograph their opening to the sunrise and sunset. I have one plant that's on an eastern wall facing west, and its blooms open a little bit later. But I do have one that's on a western wall facing east, and it gets a lot more shade, so its blooms open less frequently, but they stay open quite a bit longer. And then of course the long form of the flower, as well as the tropane alkaloids, are part of an evolutionary arms race to try and prevent pollination from unideal pollinators. So while bees and some other pollinators have figured out how to work these flowers, its main pollinator are hawk moths and sphinx moths. Specifically, it is one of the host plants of the tomato hornworm, which becomes the five-spotted hawk moth. Scientific name Manduca quinquemaculata. Out in the wild, you can usually find these things growing in sandy slopes, in washes around the city, on the side of the road. They're kind of a weed, so they'll grow anywhere that they can. And they do like fairly high alkaline soil. Honestly, if you can grow peppers or tomatoes there, you can grow sacred Datura, and it won't even cost you any more water. That being said, it is a very tenacious plant, and part of its life cycle is that it recedes back to the root and then grows back again. So when you commit it to the soil, you're kind of committing it there for life unless you plan to dig it up by the root, which can also be a little bit of a pain because pretty small shards of the root can survive and grow back. I have had success with growing these in a container, however, and they do fine as long as you have the correct soil. Which is to say, kind of gravelly, kind of sandy, don't water it too much. You don't have to take too close a care of this plant. It grows like wild. You're going to want to keep it out of reach of like dogs, cats, and kids. It is extremely toxic to eat. It's fine to touch, but don't eat it. And every part of the plant is toxic, so don't worry. You can go ahead and deadhead it. Nothing eats the seeds. Birds won't touch the plant. They'll land on it and they'll forage for bugs on it, but they're not going to eat anything from the plant. If you do want to let one go to seed, be careful when handling the fruit. It's called a thorn apple for a reason. It's very spiky, and it's extra spiky once it dries, and you want to harvest it once it dries. And the plant isn't very shy about cracking a pod open when it's ready. A single pod can contain like 30 to 50 seeds, so it really only takes one pod, and not even that really. When it comes to actually planting them from seed, I've had just about as much luck actually putting them in the ground as just tossing them on top. They will do better with cold stratification and light scarification. Probably the best method that I've found, though, is to find one that is somewhere it's not supposed to be, uproot it, cut off a chunk of the root, and then put that root in the ground. It'll be a little dramatic about it for like 3 to 4 weeks, and then it should start producing fresh foliage. And then you can watch as it grows, it stems out in fractals, and most nightshades will do this, but it's really pronounced in Sacred Datura. All in all, while this is my favorite flower, I gotta say I do not recommend it unless you are a huge enthusiast for rare or strange or dangerous flowers. For one, if you don't live here where they grow in the wild, I'm not sure what kind of challenges you might face trying to grow it. They are pretty adapted to this heat, sunlight, aridity, and alkalinity. Plus, if you live outside their range, there's probably a cousin plant like Datura stramonium Jimson weed that'll be available to you. To my knowledge, these plants are functionally identical, like all the warnings that I would apply here apply to that. But even if you live here, full disclosure, the leaves of this plant smell like butt. The flowers are great. Like, I'm no floral sommelier. I'd say they kind of smell like somewhere between vanilla and laundry, but the leaves smell like how you know it's time to do laundry. I have heard some conflicting reports about the toxicity of this plant towards bees and whether or not the honey can actually host the tropane alkaloids. The beekeepers I know around here haven't reported anything wrong with the bees or honey, but I'm no biochemist, so I can't tell you where anecdote ends and science begins. All in all, Sacred Datura is a gorgeous flower that is going to attract a diverse array of pollinators to the garden, but it comes with some serious caveats that are worth considering before you decide to introduce it to your yard.